I've lived in my home for 13 years, and through predatory lending, I have gone through foreclosure. To date, that foreclosure is actually being looked at because it was actually illegal. I was inspired and encouraged to start to stand up for myself when I saw this woman over in Oakland actually break back into her home.
That was a San Francisco homeowner telling her story in a new chapter of the Occupy protests, the Occupy Our Homes movement. Yesterday was a national day of action that saw protesters reoccupying foreclosed homes in New York, Georgia, Illinois, Florida, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, and California. And now there is big news in the legal fight against wrongful foreclosures and to hold banks accountable for their wrongdoing. The attorneys general of Nevada and California, the states that rank number 1 and number 2 for percentage of homes in foreclosure, announced that they have teamed up to launch a wide-ranging joint investigation to help homeowners who have been harmed by misconduct and fraud in the mortgage industry. Joining me now is California Attorney General Kamala Harris. Kamala, thanks for joining me tonight.
It's great to be with you, Lawrence.
This announcement comes after you were all in a 50-state negotiation with all 50 state attorneys general and the big 5 banks. But you and your Nevada colleague have decided to pull out and go your own way because the 50-state approach wasn't working. Why wasn't that working?
Well, I pulled California out in September, and essentially it became very clear to me that it was not, the discussion there did not represent a fair deal for California. As you mentioned, California has experienced an incredible hardship. We have been alternating with Nevada between number 1 and number 2, with the cities hardest hit by the foreclosure crisis. The great Attorney General of Nevada, Catherine Masto, has been looking at this issue for quite some time. And so most recently, and yesterday, in fact, we announced a joint investigation agreement where we are joining forces around our targeted investigations. And so we have each independently been doing this work, and we are now collaborating and sharing intelligence, sharing witnesses and documents and the subpoena power that we each have to focus on the need for accountability and consequence for wrongdoers, and also to make sure that we are doing a full and fair investigation so that we can be sure that when and if there is ever a discussion or we come to a point of reaching a settlement, it will be fair and it will be proportionate to the harm that each of our states experienced.
And the harm that your states have experienced have included the practices by the lenders that moved these mortgages out to borrowers who were not aware and were never made aware of the full dimensions of what they were getting into. And now there's this other component, which is the people who are in trouble on their mortgages are falling prey to all sorts of schemes that are being offered them with the notion that these schemes will help them get out of trouble with their mortgages.
Right. So earlier this year, I created a mortgage fraud strike force in California, and it's actually a team of 40 lawyers from my consumer, corporate, and criminal fraud divisions. And we have been looking at everything from the origination issue and what happened during that phase of the mortgage process and false claims that may have been associated with the origination of those loans, and then right through the servicing part up until the securitization. And the story that you just showed a clip from was a town hall that I held in San Francisco, and the woman, Denise, is someone who described something that I'm hearing up and down the state of California, and Catherine Masto will tell you that she's hearing it across Nevada, which is the homeowner who is in the process of foreclosure. Then they borrow money from friends and family to try and keep the home through the process of modifying their loan, modification process. And so we call this dual track. And so you see countless numbers of homeowners making every good attempt to stay in their home and to pay with a modified rate. There's no communication between these two tracks. And so you hear stories like Denise or other people who will tell you that they're in the process of sending documents to the servicing banks. They don't get responses. They get conflicting information. And then all of a sudden, someone knocks on their door and tells them their home has been sold. This is not... yeah, I'll let you finish, but I'll just make an obvious point. This is not what our system should be designed to do. Our system should be designed to give these people who are in most desperate straits, give them dignity in the process and give them enough information so that if they have the ability and the desire to try and keep their homes, we give them an opportunity to do that.
Kamala, I think if we were talking about mortgage fraud with an attorney general 10 years ago, or possibly even 5 years ago, what we'd be talking about is fraud perpetrated by borrowers in overstating their incomes or just, putting stuff on the application that just isn't true in order to get mortgages that they couldn't handle. But mortgage fraud now involves these other components that we're talking about. And at this stage of your investigation in this subject, could you give us a sense of how much of each one of these components fed the disaster that we're in now? I mean, how much of it would you assign, if you could, to frauds perpetrated by borrowers on their applications versus the institutional fraud that was going on?
You're absolutely right, Lawrence. So 5 years ago, I was actually the DA of San Francisco. And did a lot of this work as district attorney, which was at that time looking at predatory practices. So it was a subprime loan situation where there were these inflated estimates of the value of homes. Everyone could apply for a loan. And it was an awful situation because there were extreme examples of predatory practices that included, for example, offering a lot of seniors in particular reverse mortgages. And so we were investigating fraud from that perspective. Fast forward to now, we're looking at scam artists, predators who are trying to help people foreclose their home, charging them money when they're doing nothing to help them.
California Attorney General Kamala Harris, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.